Herbert Fisher and Zamara George were married on the 13th of May in 1924 in North Carolina, USA. And they had been married for 86 years, 290 days in 2011 when Mr. Fisher passed away. 86 years. And so they hold the Guinness World Record for the longest marriage. When she was 103 years old, Zamara scorned the idea that there's some secret to the longevity of their marriage. No secrets, she said. There isn't any secret. It was only God that kept us together. Besides family, God and the church were ever present in the Fishers' lives. Zamara didn't attribute her long, vibrant life to healthy eating or exercise or costly nutritional supplements. Her efforts had been focused on her inner person and building relationships with others. She said, "You have to know how to talk to people. Try to treat everyone right." So Herbert and Zamira had a loving understanding of each other, and they cherished each other. They were soulmates and married for 86 years. So I looked it up because as I look around today, I can be sure that there will be single parents and divorced people here in our congregation today. There will also be other couples who are in a second marriage after having the first one annulled. Others will be in a second marriage without having gone through the annulment process, some because they did not qualify. Others may be like a friend of mine who's in a second marriage, and he told me, "When I married my first wife, we were in love. After 20 years and many changes in our lives, we grew so far apart, we became different people. I don't want to go through the annulment process and say hurtful things about her or something that isn't true just to get an annulment, so I have not applied for it." And that's not the first time someone in a second marriage has told me something like that. And so as we gather here today, people like the ones I've just described will be listening. Maybe here, maybe online. And I wonder, how will those who are divorced and or remarried hear today's gospel? Will Jesus sound harsh and unbending? Will the gospel stir up past or present guilt, a sense of failure or inadequacy? Will the well-married be moved to a sense of superiority and egoism? Marriage is hard, but we made a go of it. We stayed together. Why couldn't they? Jesus places the ideal of a permanent, loving relationship before us today. One of the big influences in our lives is TV, and we've grown used to television soap operas and season-long series and reality shows with very casual sexual situations, multiple marriages, cohabitation, and everything like that. Jesus' teaching can sound terribly old-fashioned, even quaint in comparison to what we see on TV. Now, besides stating the ideal, Jesus is also suggesting the good news in his teaching. In what way? You see, for those who accept the kingdom of God like a child, what the world may consider outdated and impossible is possible. And that's why we gather for Mass. We acknowledge we need help to live up to Jesus' teachings and example, and we turn to God for help, for nourishment. Jesus says a man who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And he says the same about women who divorce their husbands. In the Middle East of 2,000 years ago, families arranged marriages, and so a woman's whole family might be shamed if she were divorced. Think of all the conflict then between the male relatives in both families. So often a divorce could lead to bloodshed between such families. And one reason divorce was originally prohibited was to prevent such feuding and bloodshed. Jesus' hearers would have heard another piece of good news. This is for women. In his time, men could divorce their wives. As we heard, Moses permitted a man to write a bill of divorce and dismiss her. What would happen to a woman who was dismissed by her husband? At that time, she couldn't go to night school and learn medicine or computer skills and take on a new job and a career. Dismissed wives could very easily become outcasts from their own families, even abandoned. And that frequently happened. In the Old Testament, there were some who interpret the law about divorce very loosely. Deuteronomy 24 verse 1 gives the permission for a man to divorce his wife if he finds something objectionable about her. And the objectionable thing could be something as trivial as poor cooking. So, for example, if a wife burnt the lamb roast, she might find herself dismissed. Who would then support her and the children? So Jesus' teaching about divorce tried to provide a fixed structure for a couple to live together with a sense of permanence and security, especially for the women. Now, our society has come a long way, but even today, divorced women and their children can be very vulnerable. And there are women who are trying to hold down jobs and raise their children without the support of their former spouses. Civil law views marriage as a legal contract. In contrast, our religious tradition holds marriage as a sacrament. God is involved in the union of a man and a woman in Christian marriage. And more, the love between them is a sign of Christ's love for his church. And so our ideal is a loving and a permanent union between spouses in marriage. The whole community benefits from such permanent structures. People of faith see in them signs of God's abiding presence. And marriage unions challenge the spouses to be faithful and loving and self-sacrificing for one another. This ideal of perfection, which reflects the image of God's love, is also impossible to achieve, but it's still worth striving for. And that's important. It's still worth striving for. I think every adult here knows that marriage can be difficult. And when a marriage is failing, sometimes nothing remains but hurt and the potential for still more hurt. In such painful circumstances, people feel there is little alternative but to end the union and to try to begin again. And it seems then these days this is more and more the case. Those who acknowledge their own failings in marriage but still want to continue following Christ will ask for forgiveness for any part they may have played in the breakup. And so it's a challenge to our church to consider how we are to treat those sincere and wounded people who have gone through a divorce. Our laws are meant to protect the institution of marriage for the common good. And then we are reminded that Jesus taught mercy and forgiveness. Jesus always showed love and compassion to the vulnerable. And we as church must do the same during this time of crisis for the institution of marriage and the family. We cannot blindly hold on to its current laws and restrictions, because the church's understanding of marriage has grown and developed tremendously since biblical times. And so today, as we reflect on marriage, we're called now to raise up the ideal. And we are also called to minister to those who are wounded by their previous experience in marriage, who now hope to start afresh in new relationships and still be full participants in the church.